Imagine police pounding on your front door at like 4:15 in the morning.
Right.
Inside your small apartment are two protective dogs, and you have a friend sleeping in the next room.
Yeah.
How is it possible that the dogs don't make a single sound, the friend never wakes up, and by sunrise, you have completely vanished off the face of the earth, leaving your keys, your wallet, and your car behind?
It sounds like a movie, but that impossible scenario is the actual reality of the case we're analyzing for you today.
Yeah.
We are looking at the disappearance of 21-year-old Kortne Stouffer, who she vanished from her apartment in Palmyra, Pennsylvania in the early hours of July 29th, 2012. Right, and our mission here is to sift through all of that noise to really understand the environment Kortne was operating in.
Yeah.
Because, when someone vanishes without a trace, the surrounding context, the friction they had with people, the state of their life at that very moment, that often dictates exactly how the search is handled.
Absolutely.
Like the Charlie Project, for instance, is a massive volunteer-run database for cold cases. The fact that her profile is sitting there immediately signals that the official investigative system just, well, they hit a wall.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if you look at the physical description of Kortne from that database, you get a very striking image.
You really do.
She was 5'8", 110 pounds, with blonde dreadlocks, and she had these very distinct, highly visible tattoos.
Yeah, the sources detail this handgun with flowers growing out of the barrel tattooed on her abdomen, and 3 stars on her foot, and the words "One Love" on her right bicep. The O in one was a peace symbol, and the O in love was a heart.
Right. That physical description paints a picture of someone who is, vibrant and expressive.
Definitely. And historically, when the media covers a young blonde woman going missing, they tend to reach for this very specific narrative trope.
Oh, for sure. The perfect victim trope.
Exactly. The narrative flattens the person into this idealized figure, someone who, lit up every room and had absolutely no enemies.
Right, but the raw commentary from the local forums and those Reddit threads fundamentally disrupts that image.
It does. And we need to look at what the community was saying, because community perception directly influences how law enforcement approaches a case in those crucial early days.
Yeah, the pushback against that idealized narrative in the sources is intense. Like, you have Reddit users explicitly calling her out as high maintenance or, exhausting to be around. And there's this very striking comment from someone claiming to be a former high school classmate who actually described Kortne as a bully.
The bully, right.
They claimed she walked around with a top-of-the-food-chain attitude, often getting in people's faces. The implication being that she might have flashed that attitude to the wrong person.
Like someone actually at the top of the food chain.
Exactly. Now, we're not endorsing that view, obviously, but we're reporting it impartially because that's what's in the sources, and it matters.
It absolutely matters. And the forums also delve into some darker rumors regarding drug use, specifically claims that she was involved with bath salts and owed money to local dealers.
Bath salts in 2012.
Yeah, we need to contextualize what bath salts meant back then. These are synthetic stimulants. Chemically, they were known as MDPV or mephedrone.
Right, those were huge in the news around that time.
They were notorious for inducing extreme paranoia, terrifying hallucinations, erratic behavior, and really intense aggression. Now, again, we're just conveying what the original sources claim, not taking a stance on her actual habits. But if those rumors held any truth, it completely changes the lens through which we view her highly volatile behavior that night.
It's like looking at a person through a shattered prism. If investigators only look for a perfect, flawless victim, do they miss the messy, real-world clues left behind by a complicated life?
That's a perfect way to put it. Kortne was living an intense life, and that intensity is the baseline for the entire timeline of Saturday, July 28th.
So let's get into that timeline, because here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, let's trace it. Starting at Kortne's upstairs apartment in Palmyra. She lived in half of a duplex with her boyfriend, Brad Hare.
Right.
That evening, they're hosting a gathering and alcohol is present. The catch is Brad is currently on house arrest and probation for an underage DUI involving alcohol and drugs.
Which means his legal status is incredibly fragile. Like, one wrong move and he's done.
Extremely fragile. And probation officers conduct these random sweeps, especially on weekends.
Oh.
Yeah. Suddenly, officers arrive at the apartment for a compliance check. They discover the alcohol, which is a direct violation of his probation terms.
So they just take him.
Arrested on the spot and taken away.
And Kortne's reaction to this is just absolute fury. The sources note she is convinced her downstairs neighbors called the police to complain about the party.
Right. She thinks the noise complaint triggered the probation visit.
Exactly. She is suddenly facing the reality that her boyfriend is going to be locked up for a long time.
She is operating at, like, a peak emotional frequency here. And instead of staying home to process this, she leaves Palmyra and heads out to the hardware bar in downtown Harrisburg with some friends.
But the change of scenery does not calm her down at all. Our sources indicate she gets into another physical altercation at that bar.
Yeah, another fight.
This entire night is like a pressure cooker. Every single event, the boyfriend's sudden arrest, the paranoia about the neighbors, the physical fight at the bar, it all just cranked the heat higher, and the return to the apartment was the valve finally blowing off.
That's exactly what it was. So eventually, she gets a ride back to Palmyra with a friend named Cody Pruitt and another man, Milton Rodriguez Jr.
Okay.
They arrive back in her neighborhood around 3 a.m. They drop Milton off nearby, and Cody stays with Kortne just to make sure she gets home safely.
But the moment she walks up to that duplex, the accelerants ignite. She encounters her neighbors.
The ones she blames for Brad's arrest.
Right. We have their names from the reporting. Todd Saksek, who lived in the other half of the duplex, and Janice Riemenschneider and Rich Sheets, who lived directly below Kortne's unit.
And Kortne just erupts. The neighbors report to local media that she is screaming at them, even kicking and swinging at Todd Saksek.
Kicking at him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cody actually has to physically step between them to break it up, though the neighbors claim Cody was also making some hostile remarks during the confrontation.
The situation is totally out of control. It prompts the neighbors to retreat inside and call 911, which leads to the first police visit of the morning.
Right, so officers arrive shortly after 3 a.m. They separate everyone, tell them to go into their respective apartments, and they actually manage to de-escalate the scene. By 3:50 a.m., the police leave.
But the calm only lasts, what, 22 minutes?
Barely. At 4:12 a.m., Todd Saksek calls 911 again.
The neighbor.
Right. He reports that Kortne is violently stomping on the floor of her upstairs apartment, clearly still enraged.
So the police turn around and come right back. They walk up to Kortne's door, but this time all the lights are off. They knock. They get no response. They go knock on the neighbor's door. No response there either. So without making contact with anyone, the police just leave the premises.
Which is wild because inside that dark apartment is Cody Pruitt.
Right.
When police finally interview him later, his claim is that he and Kortne went to sleep immediately after that first police visit.
Wait.
He says he slept through the violent stomping that prompted the 911 call, and he slept through the police knocking on the door just feet away.
Hold on. We need to scrutinize this because the logic completely falls apart here. He slept through violent floor-shaking stomping and then police pounding on an exterior door.
That's what he claims.
Is the implication in these true crime forums that he was heavily intoxicated, or are people suggesting he's flat out lying? How does a young woman who is so enraged that she is loudly stomping on the floor at 4 a.m. suddenly go dead silent a few minutes later when the police arrive?
It definitely defies standard human behavior. I mean, for the noise to stop that abruptly, either she realized the police were back and intentionally hid in silence, or she was physically incapacitated.
Oh my gosh.
Or, and this is what a lot of people think, the stomping wasn't her at all, but rather the sounds of a struggle that ended right before officers walked up those stairs.
Okay, let's talk about the physical layout of that apartment when Cody wakes up. It's 7:30 a.m.
Right.
He assumes Kortne is sleeping in another room. He walks to a nearby convenience store, buys a drink, texts her saying he couldn't find her and he'll see her later, and then he leaves.
He just leaves.
But look at the inventory of what she supposedly left behind. Her keys, her wallet, her cell phone, her shoes, and her 2002 Ford Focus parked right outside.
Yeah, that inventory is the textbook profile of someone who did not leave on their own volition.
Exactly.
You don't leave your shoes and your phone if you are just storming out to cool off.
But wait, the most staggering detail here is the dogs.
The dogs. Yes.
She left behind her dog and her boyfriend's dog. 2 dogs in a small upstairs apartment. How do 2 dogs not bark their heads off when the police are pounding on the door at 4:15 in the morning?
It's crazy. The physical reality of canine behavior makes that silence incredibly suspicious.
Dogs are fiercely territorial, especially when their owners are agitated.
Right, they feed off that energy.
Exactly. A late-night knock triggers a massive, loud response. The silence of those dogs implies a few very narrow possibilities.
Like what?
Well, they were either physically neutralized or they were deeply familiar with whoever might have been at the door or inside the apartment, which kept them calm.
Or we have to consider that the police simply didn't knock loud enough to wake anyone human or canine.
See, because the police failed to make contact with anyone inside the apartment at 4:12 a.m., they lost control of the immediate scene.
They really did.
They didn't breach the door because they only had a noise complaint, which, doesn't give them the legal probable cause to force entry. But that initial hesitation to investigate further bred a much larger systemic failure in the weeks that followed.
It created this huge information vacuum. When the immediate inner circle yields no answers, investigators have to rely on objective evidence, right, like surveillance video.
Sure.
So the Palmyra police eventually went to local businesses to ask for footage from the street.
And this is where the timeline of the investigation becomes incredibly frustrating. The sources note that the police waited 3 full weeks to request that footage.
3 weeks.
Most businesses didn't even have cameras, but a place called Miller Auto did.
Yeah, and the reality of digital surveillance is that systems are built to overwrite themselves to save server space. 30 days is standard, but many systems overwrite in 14 or even 7 days, depending on the hardware.
And it gets worse. The police asked Miller Auto for the tape on a Friday. They discovered that the tape from July 29th, the exact morning Kortne vanished, had been overwritten and deleted just the day before.
Oh, you're kidding.
No. They missed the only objective witness to that street by 24 hours because they waited almost a month to ask.
I mean, for a family searching for a child, that kind of bureaucratic delay is agonizing. The loss of that tape leaves the door wide open for theories to just fill the void.
Definitely.
And the most compelling and frankly terrifying lead in the entire case comes from a woman named Amanda Ballister.
The narrative takes a massive shift here from a domestic dispute into something highly orchestrated. Tell them about her tip.
So Amanda Ballister approaches Kortne's father, Scott Stouffer, with a tip. She claims she heard a detailed confession from acquaintances connected to the local criminal underworld. The theory is that the 911 calls were either a calculated distraction or that a third party simply took advantage of the chaos of that night.
But why? What was the motive?
The motive she provides centers entirely on those rumors of drug involvement we mentioned earlier. Ballister claims Kortne was murdered during a targeted robbery for a large stash of marijuana and cash located inside the apartment.
Wow.
The perpetrators allegedly knew the stash was unguarded because word had already spread that Brad had been taken to jail by probation officers earlier that evening.
So they knew she was vulnerable.
Right.
The details she provides are incredibly grim. She claims Kortne's body was rolled up in a rug, weighed down with chains and cinder blocks, and then driven 12 miles away to be dumped in Memorial Lake, which is this 85-acre body of water in a state park.
Now, jailhouse tips or secondhand underworld rumors are notoriously unreliable. They're often fabricated for reward money or plea deals.
Right.
But Scott Stouffer sits down with Ballister for 3 hours, and he walks away completely convinced her story is true.
Because she knew details that were absolutely not public knowledge. She described the specific color and pattern of a carpet used to roll the body. And Scott confirms that a carpet matching that exact unique description was actually missing from Kortne's apartment.
That is chilling.
It is. She also mentioned that while the drugs and cash were taken, the robbers left behind a money counting machine. And Scott confirmed that a money counter was indeed found in the apartment.
So investigators are presented with a tipster offering non-public crime scene details, a clear motive, a method of disposal, and a specific location.
A gold mine of a tip.
You'd think so.
Huh.
But Lebanon County District Attorney David Arnold evaluates the tip, and he absolutely refuses to search Memorial Lake.
Wait, I have to push back hard on the DA's logic here. The sources say he refused because Ballister's story changed slightly over various phone calls and because the county didn't have its own scuba team.
Yeah, that was his reasoning.
Is a logistical hurdle like lacking a local dive team really a valid reason to dismiss a tip containing non-public details like a missing carpet and a money counter? That seems absurd.
Well, from an administrative and legal standpoint, authorizing a search of an 85-acre lake is a massive undertaking.
I mean, sure, but...
Water searches are incredibly complex. Visibility is often near zero, requiring sonar equipment and grid searches by specialized outside agencies, which cost tens of thousands of dollars.
Okay, I get the cost factor.
Right. DAs require rock-solid probable cause to authorize that expenditure. Arnold felt the inconsistencies in her story undermined that probable cause.
But from an investigative standpoint, dismissing it just feels like a colossal missed opportunity, especially when you cross-reference this with the Reddit sources we discussed earlier.
Exactly. Because months after the initial tip, a Reddit user posts a very specific claim. They state that while they were locked up in the Lebanon County Correctional Facility, they heard the exact same story from a major dealer of bath salts.
The exact same story.
Yeah. They heard about a robbery, a murder, and a body being dumped in a local lake. When multiple unconnected people in the correctional system are echoing the same highly specific narrative, it transcends a simple rumor.
It really does. It starts looking like a map. You have the father confirming the missing carpet, the tipster naming the lake, and the jailhouse network repeating the exact same sequence of events.
If we connect this to the bigger picture and look at the architecture of this entire investigation, a very stark picture emerges about how the system handles complicated individuals.
Oh.
Think about it. The DA's refusal to search the lake, the 3-week delay in securing the surveillance tape, the failure of the police to make physical contact after hearing violent stomping at 4:12 a.m.
The urgency just wasn't there.
It wasn't. Kortne's case demonstrates how the messy reality of human behavior interacts with bureaucratic inertia.
Right.
If a victim has a history of physical altercations, neighborhood disputes, or rumors of drug debt, the institutional response often slows down.
That is so sad.
It is. The immediate assumption leans toward the person running away to avoid trouble, rather than being a victim of foul play.
Which completely challenges our true crime obsession with finding flawless victims. If someone is messy or difficult, the trail is just allowed to go cold.
Exactly. And Scott Stouffer is left out there, offering a $50,000 reward, chasing ghosts, and begging for a dive team to just look in a lake.
The first 48 hours of evidence gathering are critical. When you wait almost a month for a security tape, the evidence literally deletes itself. The window for justice closes before anyone even realizes it was open.
It's a harsh reality.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We started this deep dive by looking at how a person's reputation can fracture into a dozen different narratives and how those narratives affect the search for truth. Kortne's last known hours were a chaotic, murky mess of stomping feet, screaming matches, and neighborhood drama.
It was a night entirely defined by overwhelming, escalating noise.
Exactly. And I want to leave you with a final, lingering question to mull over. We always assume that a chaotic environment makes it harder to get away with a crime because there are so many eyes and ears on high alert.
Sure, that's the standard logic.
But what if the opposite is true? Did the sheer volume of noise surrounding Kortne that night, the literal stomping on the floorboards, the police sirens, the screaming at the neighbors, did all of that chaos actually provide the perfect, distracting cover of silence for whoever made her disappear?
It's a terrifying thought. The clues are all there in the dark, waiting for someone to finally turn on the lights.
Keep digging, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.